There we go. Hello, my name is Bonnie Garcia-Glockner. I'm the Assistant Director for the Office of National Fellowships. Thank you for being here in person because now I can look at both of you. And also thank you to everyone that is joining us over Zoom. And if you're watching this late, shucks, thanks for watching that too. We are here today to talk about the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, specifically the English Teaching Assistantship Awards. This is I don't know, it's such a flexible award, so I'm excited to talk about this with you all today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that everyone can see. And if you were here yesterday, thank you for joining us again. Should be good. I'm gonna get that to go away so you guys can see it. Okay. So in addition to myself, we have the other Fulbright advisors, primary Fulbright advisors at least here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Keith McCall, I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards. So if you're a graduate student, likely you'll work with me.
And
Hey everyone, Jesse Wieland. I'm the Associate Director at the Office of National Fellowships. I'm home under the weather, so that's why my camera's off. I'll be monitoring the chat, so if you do have questions during the presentation, if I can answer them directly, I will do so, or I'll hold them until Bonnie reaches that point in the presentation. But looking forward to talking with you all about Fulbright.
Yeah, so we have a poll for you. Keith is manning this poll. Are you interested in applying for Fulbright this cycle, or is this a fact-finding mission for you? Okay. Nice, okay. And what's your student status? Undergrad, graduate? Undergrad, okay, cool. As you'll see, because I'll go over the timeline again, it's a very long process. So that's why we start talking to students as early as their, sometimes freshman year, but we start working with students on applications as early as the spring of their junior year. So we'll get into that as we go. Okay, so we've got, all right, yeah, pretty good amount of people that are interested in applying this cycle. Perfect. Those of you that aren't interested, I'm glad that you are here potentially early or just, learning about the program. Mostly undergrads, or got one grad student in there? That one's yours, Keith. We got a bunch of undergrads, great. And then let's see, what type of activity are you interested in pursuing? Well, that's good because you are in the right place today. If you are here for study research, you'll see that there's a slight variation in what you have to write. And so if you want to know more about that, obviously we'll be back next week as well. Or next week, tomorrow as well. Okay. Do you want to take that off the screen, or do I need
You can just close on your screen.
Okay. Cool. Clicker doesn't work. Awesome. Okay. So, what is Fulbright? Very quickly, if you were not here yesterday, Fulbright is this massive program. It encompasses about 160 countries plus at this point, and they award about 8,000 awards every year to students, staff, teachers, artists, professionals, really at all levels of academia, with the idea of fostering mutual understanding and building those cultural and educational bridges, really. And so this is sponsored by the State Department. Florida State has been fortunate since the 1960s to have over 160 students receive the Fulbright Award, a Fulbright. And in addition to that, we have at any given time a whole host of faculty members that are here on Fulbrights, or faculty members that are doing Fulbrights. We have students that are also here from another country that has a Fulbright commission studying at Florida State. So it is a real mixed bag, right? It's not defined for any specific major. It's not defined for any specific field. If you have an interest in going abroad, building those connections, doing this type of work, either teaching English or doing a study research or graduate enrollment, this program could work for you, right? So eligibility, real fast, got to be a citizen or national of the US at the time of the application. This means on October 8th, I believe is the national deadline. All of that has to be completed. So if you are in the process of going through that, make sure that that is all done before like October 1st. So that your application will still be eligible. You have to have your bachelor's degree completed, conferred, or the equivalent before the start of the grant. So that is why we are working with students, undergrads in particular, starting in their junior year, because they will be waiting through most of their senior year to hear back about that. And then they'll have, if selected, they would start their Fulbright the year after that, right? So you'd already have that degree. I do want to point out that we work with alumni. So we have had students that, for whatever reason, Fulbright didn't work out. Maybe they didn't get it, or maybe they didn't feel like they could apply. We work with people, we work with seniors that are graduating, right? And we also work with folks a few years after graduation. So if you're an alumni and you haven't enrolled at another institution, you are welcome to come back and work with our offices. Okay. Some of them will have a language requirement, so you do need to meet that language requirement for the award to which you're applying. And that will be located on the country page for your award. So make sure that you are paying close attention to that. It will require you reaching out to likely someone in modern languages to evaluate your proficiency level. And you have to be in good health. So if awarded, you will need to submit a satisfactory medical clearance form from a physician. Fulbright does try to be as inclusive as possible. So if you do have medical issues that might preclude you from being in certain locations or might cause some issues, right? If there's medication that you need to get and it needs to come at very specific times, it's a matter of contacting them first to make sure that they can work with you through that process. Okay. So let's get into English teaching assistantships. This award puts Fulbrighters into a classroom abroad, either to do some amount of co-teaching or to be the primary teacher, but oftentimes you're working with a local instructor, right? If you don't have teaching experience, that's okay. That's actually very common in Fulbright or the ETA awards. There's only, I want to say there's only like a handful that really want you to have some amount of teaching experience before you've gone. But for the most part, even if you didn't get a chance to, you know, tutor while you were an undergrad, this is still an opportunity that would be available to you. In this previous cycle, there were over 1,100 ETA awards available. So this is a very large part of their US student programs, is putting individuals from the US into these abroad classrooms. Okay. Where would you be placed, right? The short answer is it depends. So some of these countries will have very specific placement ideas. They'll say, we really need people that are going to go into, you know, these rural schools to educate just that population, but you won't necessarily know what that town is. So they're going to put you wherever they need you, right? Some of them will be very specific in that, you know, it's going to be in like this specific region of Spain or around this country. I mentioned Spain because their program is massive. And if you've taken a look at that page, which we may use as an example today, it has very specific requirements for each of those placements. So it really depends. I think in most cases, you really want to make sure that you are okay with not being in the capital or a larger city. Many of them are, like I said, out further from those cities and smaller towns. Okay. Also considering, you know, how are you going to react to having to do maybe public transport or, you know, being in another country. These are all things to consider as you start crafting those statement of grant purpose and your personal statements. What are the hours like? You are there to teach. You are there to work, right? The ETAs, depending on the country, you're working anywhere from 12 to 25 hours a week. And that is not just in classroom time, but preparing to teach, right? Some of the placements will want you to be teaching, let's see, they'll want you to be teaching as well as doing a supplemental project. And so we'll get into what a supplemental project is, but it's essentially another way for you to work with the host community. So in that case, you may see that maybe you're only expected to work 16 hours a week, but you're also expected to do this project. So they're sort of giving you built-in time to do that project. There's some countries that, I think Korea was one of them, where it's just straight, like, you are expected to work for 20 hours a week. We don't want you doing a supplemental project. We don't want you doing any of that. Like, you are there to teach. So that is also an important consideration when you start looking at the ETA pages. Like, if you see one, you're like, wow, I don't jive with any of this. That may not be the placement that you want to be doing. And just making sure that you are cognizant of that. I'm going to show you a few resources on the website too that are good for helping to narrow that down. So if you know, I want to be in a larger city, this can tell you pretty fast what some of the placements are that have larger cities, right? I know that I want to work with middle schoolers. These are the school, I mean, bless you if that's the case, but these are the locations that would have you potentially working in a middle school, right? So let's talk about two very important parts of your application. Your application, along with your biographical information, all that jazz, right? Letters of rec, or in this case, the forms, the reference forms, you will have a one-page personal statement and a one-page statement of grant purpose. Their personal statement is really your why. So why have you decided to pursue an ETA award, right? What about your background, your experiences, your education, your career goals makes you suited or interested in having that type of experience, right? What they don't want is sort of that line by line reiteration of your resume. They want to know really, what is it that gets you so excited at the prospect of teaching abroad? What have you maybe done previously that made you think, oh, this might be something that I could be really good at, right? They don't expect people to go through the ETA, award and all of them turn into teachers, right? The idea is that you can see the importance of fostering those cultural engagements with a host community, that you understand the importance of building those bridges. And then hopefully whatever you do after your ETA, you are better aware of the different populations that are around you and how you might engage with them, right? It's all going back to that Fulbright mission. That statement of grant purpose, also one page. This is really an essay on tactics. So how do you plan to engage your students? What do you want to do in the classroom to get them learning English, right? It should be feasible what you're doing. So I think I used the example the other day, but like, if your idea is, I want to take my class on excursions all around the countryside, that's not going to be feasible. That's like, just, it's not. So mark that from your list, right? You want it to be stuff that is maybe in line with the country, right? What do you have access to? So in some regions, this will be easier than others because you have a pretty good gauge of what you might have available. Spain being one of them. I think Korea and Taiwan are others that you have a pretty good idea of what you may be encountering there. You're also going to want to use the statement of grant purpose to talk about the experiences that you've had that make you like the skills and traits that you have that you can bring to a classroom. So maybe you don't have teaching experience, but maybe you were the secretary of a campus organization, right? And part of your job as secretary was to get everyone sort of in line, ready to go for meetings or make sure that those materials were out. Well, being able to organize large groups of people, being able to communicate effectively in that way, those are things that you would want to highlight as like, I have experience doing this. And so in the classroom, I will have the knowledge to work with a group of people in that way, right? So it's really trying to connect the dots between your experiences and how you are going to be in that classroom. And in some cases, well, I think in all cases, some part of your statement of grant purpose should talk about how you plan to engage the host community. So if it's requiring a supplemental project, this could be, I think someone a few years ago, they were like, I'm going to start a community garden. And then unfortunately, they got there and found out that a community garden already existed, right? But they had enough in there about like, these are the things that I care about. These are what I want to share with the host community as far as what it is to be American to me and what I care about within those bounds. And that was enough, right? They want to see that you have some sort of feasible idea for how you're going to engage with the community. And if for some reason it's already taken, they will allow you to change it when you get there. The idea is that you can come up with some way to work within that community. Do you all have some good examples of some engagements, Keith or Jesse, people have done?
A student I worked with last cycle who's currently a semifinalist for Kenya. She's a graduate student in information doctoral program here. She has a big interest in expanding literacy, so ETA makes sense for her, but also her engagement idea is creating what she calls a library in the box, and it's like a set of easy sort of digital literacy resources that she'll share with the community and make available to them. Plays to her strengths and her background. She's also worked with the National Science Foundation before and worked before with literacy startup things, so she has like good ideas to talk about there. But it also fits really well with what the country wanted because they say that they are interested in their ETAs helping transition into a more like technology forward classroom. So this is, draws on her strengths and speaks to what the host country is looking for. And that's sort of the perfect type of project to come up with.
Yeah, I would say obviously lean into your strengths, but then be very cognizant of what that country's page is looking for in their ETAs. I had a student some years ago that received an ETA to Kenya. And maybe they still have it on their page, but they specifically were looking for educators with experience in sport, debate, and the arts. And the student I was working with happened to be a camp counselor working with special needs populations for many years and had experience in all of those categories and wove that into his application. I've also had a student that applied to Argentina a few years ago, who was a semifinalist, ultimately didn't receive the award, but they had a very strong application. And their whole focus was looking into, okay, so why did I apply to Argentina? Was because they had lower retention rates at the college level based on some data that they had found. And their background, they had worked with a lot of professional development organizations, worked with other college students. And so in addition to teaching English, they wanted to establish an after-school program for their high schoolers that could focus on resume, CV development, interview preparation, college prep, whether they ultimately chose to go to college or go to technical school or just pursue a job. But they did a lot of research into the why, like what is relevant for my students here, and how do I think I would be helpful in that setting. So, and then anything. I've also had students that are like, I'm a musician and I'm going to find like a local group to play with, and that's my way to engage with the culture. So, it doesn't have to be this communal like group project. It could be, I really want to dig into this aspect of the culture and learn more. And I don't know, there's a lot of variance, but it does depend on the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for both of these documents that the award that you're applying for, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Right. So as you're writing stuff like your statement of grant purpose, if you could go in and like Control F and search for Spain and replace all of it with Italy and it still makes sense, that's probably not a specific enough statement of grant purpose, right? While you can't get into a specific location within the country for most of them, because they're going to put you where they need you, you do want to make sure it's still specific to that country. Right. I had a student this past year who applied to the Spain ETA. She's actually over there right now, still working. Spain ETA. And for Spain, you can choose regions. So she chose the Canary Islands. Well, in her research of the Canary Islands, she found that there was a pretty large migrant and refugee population. So she was like, okay, well, it's possible that those students will be in my classroom, right? So it's not enough to just approach this like speaking Spanish to them to get them on task. How do we sort of engage them? So those little tidbits that you can put into the statement of grant purpose that show that you have done some amount of research into where you might be going can really go a long way, because it just shows that there's already that commitment on your end to the community that you may end up working with. Anything else about the personal statement or statement of grant purpose, guys?
In terms of the statement of grant purpose, I would add just to keep in mind that you're there to teach English. You're also there to teach a little bit about like what it means to be American and what America is, how you represent it. So finding ways to fit in when you're talking about your teaching materials or things like that, things that are sort of true to your interests and true to how you want to represent the US is also useful. So think of having that dual purpose that yes, you're teaching English, but you're also teaching, you are representing the US and sort of acting as an interface for people to learn about culture, life, whatever in the US.
Yeah, I always have a couple students every year who feel that they need to be what comes off as being cartoonishly patriotic about the I'm going to bring culture to the classroom, so we're going to talk about hot dogs and the 4th of July, and it's like, okay, great, but can we think of something maybe that's a little bit more unique to you, your experience, or how would you define American culture? It doesn't have to be in like these stereotypical ways. I think you can talk about different mediums that you feel are going to be really impactful educational tools. I've myself and other students that I've worked with have talked about very specific music genres or artists that we felt are reflective of American culture and society. So you can be very creative with it. But I guess that's my piece of advice.
So this supplemental project, as we've been talking about, it's this additional aspect of most of these ETA applications. It's that chance to engage further. It can be more of a solitary thing where it's you maybe looking for a community that you already connect with here abroad. It can be something that is more communal. I had another student that she is interested in law. And so she actually was like, well, I'm going to go find this different human rights lawyers and see if they'll let me shadow. And they did. So she's teaching right now I think it's in Spain, northern Spain. But she's also shadowing these lawyers like as part of her supplemental project to see how the legal systems change, how that interfacing with clients changes in that way. I mean, there's a lot of ways to incorporate your interests into that supplemental project, right? And that is part of you sharing your version of what it means to be American, your experience as an American, right? So yeah, not everything has to be fireworks and hot dogs and all that jazz, right? It needs to be feasible still. So in her case, she was able to find very early a lawyer that said that she could work with them. So she was able to talk about that specifically. But it doesn't have to be that specific right away, but it should be feasible. Again, it's like the idea of putting your entire classroom on a bus and taking them along the countryside, right? If your idea is to eliminate all plastic bag use, in a city, that's probably not going to be a feasible project for your supplemental project. Though they're doing a better job with a lot of the environmental stuff, so that doesn't really matter. It should comprise about the last third of your statement of grant purpose. I would say that if your country does not require a supplemental project, that space should still be talking about how you plan to see what is out in the community that you're in, right? You do still want to have something about what you're hoping to engage with, what you're hoping to see of that culture, how you're going to connect with that culture. This would be a very specific project in that place. Is that fair, Jesse?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So let's talk about the selection process and timeline. We are going to have a Canvas site that we will send an enrollment link around for. You will need to be in there by June 5th. We hope and we highly encourage that if you're thinking about applying, you contact us well before June 5th, right? The first draft of those Fulbright essays will be due in Canva on June 20th. And then all summer long, you will be working with your Fulbright advisor, who you will get paired with once you're in the Canva course, on perfecting those drafts, perfecting those essays, right? We're also going to be asking you stuff about like, hey, how's your language evaluation going? Or hey, have you already talked to your recommenders, right? With ETAs, the recommendation letters are actually forms. So you have to enter 3 people's information. And then Fulbright IIE sends out the forms that they will fill out online. So having that done early, knowing who you're going to potentially contact, good things to know in that sort of early June time, so that you can get it sort of off your plate, right? That will be one less thing that you're working on for that application. As far as campus deadlines go, August 28th will be our campus deadline for ETAs. This is, I think it's like the first week of class for the semester. Everything needs to be in the Fulbright portal. Now, this is not Canva. This is like the official Fulbright application portal. What we will do is then download the entirety of your completed application, and that's what we send to our campus committee. So on the 28th, you will come in to our offices or you'll meet us over Zoom. We'll go through the checklist, make sure your application has everything. If it does, you will be able to sign up for a campus interview. Campus interviews are pretty important. They provide you with a campus committee evaluation form, which when done really well is almost like another letter of recommendation attached to your application. And it's one that is stamped with like, not only does that professor, but FSU approves this person going forward in the process. You can apply for Fulbright without it. I do not, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for all of us, we do not recommend that you apply for Fulbright without that. It just, for the national level, if they see that you don't have that form, but they know that a committee exists at your school, they're gonna wonder why you didn't meet whatever deadline you needed to get that. And then the national deadline is October 8th. We're usually in by October 1st or October 2nd, so we like to make sure that everyone is taken care of well before that deadline, so no one's having to like slide into home on the 8th. And then we wait. We and you all will not find out about semifinalists until January 25th, and that is 25th. 2025, late January 2025 at that. Yeah, 25th. You all know what I'm talking about. It's right there. So in December, November and December is when the national committee gets together and they go through all of the applications by region. And so they will decide who sort of moves forward into that semifinalist stage. If you are selected as a semifinalist, you're going to be waiting even longer. If you're not selected, if it doesn't move forward, the Fulbright journey sort of ends in that January, right? If you do get pushed forward, those applications, we usually don't find out until the end of March, all the way till about June, whether or not you've gotten it. So this is why we're talking to you all in February about this award, right? Because it will be a very long process. We just found out who our semifinalists from last cycle were. So now we're in the second stage of waiting to see who moves on after that. This is just all of us. So if you weren't here before, you get to see all of our pictures. Myself, Keith, Jesse, we are sort of the primary advisors for Fulbright. And then the OGFA and ONF each have a director, Dr. Adrian Stevenson and Dr. Craig Filer, who assist when they can. But for the most part, it's the 3 of us. So when you get into the Canvas site, you will be sort of paired with one of the 3 of us. Okay. If you do have questions, please contact us. You can contact us directly. You can also attend on Friday. We're doing a just open office hours from 10 to noon. You can do it online. You could do it. We're going to be up in the Great Hall. But if you do have questions and you want to talk to someone about it, we are there to assist. By attending, you will all get sent the future Fulbright emails about like the Canvas link. It's self-enroll, so if you have decided you do not want to pursue that, you can just ignore it, right? But we hope you don't, because there's going to be lots of good info in there, and we think that everyone is capable of writing a Fulbright application. It's just a matter of whether or not where you want to go and what you want to do with it. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yeah.
How long is the commitment for?
Yeah, it's usually anywhere between 8 to 12 months. So it is that like a full year. So sometimes when we're working with juniors, like they're sort of not banking on it, but this is like their gap year idea is doing a Fulbright.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That was kind of the question in the context. What if someone wants to go to grad school and they may have like arguments for grad school, but they're still waiting on the response back from like Fulbright?
Yeah, usually if you have been, if someone is accepted into graduate school and then they are awarded the Fulbright, we've had them contact that school before, and typically the school will say something like, well, we can't guarantee it, but we really encourage you to apply again, right? Because it's good for them to have Fulbrighters coming to their school as well. That's sort of another feather in their cap. Would you say that's?
Yeah, you cannot defer Fulbright, but you
Yeah.
can defer entry into graduate programs typically. So I would say take the chance, apply to Fulbright. You know, it's one of those things like if you wind up getting offered both, it's a good problem to have, and you can decide which one makes the most sense for you.
Do they recommend, excuse me, do they recommend taking like a TFL course or something? Or?
You can. Some of them do. So we at Florida State, we have the TEFL program. We also have TESOL available if you know you're already working through that coursework. Certainly, if you have that available to you, that's another thing that you can talk about within that statement of grant purpose and your personal statement about having gone through those. Some of the countries will say though, like, if you don't have this, or, you know, by going here, we're going to make sure that you get the training needed to gain the TEFL. I want to say that Korea is one of those.
Yeah, there's a couple that do.
Yeah.
I can't think what they are.
So it depends on the country that you're looking at. Certainly the ones that want some teaching experience, like if you have it, if you're really keen on going to a country and you maybe don't have that 1 or 2 years of teaching experience, you can at least say, well, I've done this. I know how to classroom manage in this type of setting. So certainly something to look at. Usually if a student doesn't have it and they're applying for the ETA, we try to talk to them about potentially doing it even the summer before, so that's sort of in between summer, because the Center for Intensive English Studies has a summer course that I believe is only like 6 to 8 weeks long, so it's a shortened one for the summer. So if need be, if you were selected, you would have time to go through that program before you went overseas. Yeah. Did you have a question?
How does like housing work?
It depends. So some countries, on the country page, you'll see that there's usually some information about housing. Some of them will put you into like essentially family stay type of situations or try to get you with a host. Some will say, here's your housing stipend, figure it out. So it really does depend on the country. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hi, are we still doing questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, my Zoom cut out. I was wondering about the eligibility requirements. So I specifically want to go to France, and I've already lived there for 1.5 years, but it says we're not allowed to have resided there within the past 9 months. I was wondering why that is.
So for some of the countries, some of the commissions, they just want people that have not had those experiences yet. I don't know that I can speak much more to that. Many of them have residency requirements that you can't have lived there for. It's usually like 3 months or more.
Yeah, it varies by country to country, but some are like, if you've been there for 4 months in the last year, you're not eligible this cycle.
Yeah, it's It's really dependent on the country. I will say, because so much of Fulbright is about increasing access to abroad opportunities. If you've already been living somewhere, they're gonna take a look at that and say, okay, but then why do you have to go back, right? You've already had some experience in that country. But for specifics,
Oh, I see. So this probably isn't the program for me if I.
Well, I mean, you could maybe be a really strong applicant to somewhere like Belgium or Luxembourg, where they also speak French, but you wouldn't have had previous, extensive previous in-country experience.
Or you would have the TAPIF program, which I believe is funded by the French government if you're wanting to stay in France and only France. But yes, I agree with Keith. Other Francophone countries could be a really relevant option.
any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna pull up the website real fast. Let's see what that looks like.
One thing I don't think was mentioned, but while Bonnie's pulling up the website, I think could be relevant, is after semifinalist notification, some ETA countries will still do interviews for ETAs and some won't. But that is another thing that we can help prepare you for if you are notified that you're moving forward.
So this is the Fulbright website. I'll point out it needs to say Fulbright US Student Program. This is where you would find the official application. Don't just put Fulbright. It'll take you to the scholars page every year. It's like 1 or 2 students who will start applying as a scholar and then they have to move everything over. So make sure it says the US Student Program at the top. And this is where you'll see like the dates for this. So opening in April 2024. So quite a ways out, but it doesn't hurt to start thinking now about where you might want to go. Now, obviously, the numbers that I'm going to show you right now, they're for last year's competition. Usually those numbers don't change too drastically. So if you're trying to get an idea of where you might want to go and how many awards there were, the requirements for that, you can still check out those country pages. But just be aware that like some of the numbers or requirements might change in this cycle, okay? Up at the top here under applicants, if you go to application components and then ETA, it'll show you all of those parts of the application that we talked about. It'll give you specifics on the statement of grant purpose, including the proper format. Go ahead and already put your work into the proper format. It'll make your life and ours so much easier. Same thing with the personal statement, goes into what they're looking for in that personal statement, proper format for that. The foreign language forms, if you want to learn a little bit more about those language requirements, like I said, not every country has them. Some will say it's recommended, which we always say, if it's recommended and you have any proficiency, let's get you a form, right? But if you want to see what this looks like, you can actually see the instructions for foreign language evaluators. So if you had to do this, you might send this to the person that's doing the evaluation so that they're aware. But you can also see the PDF that they will fill out. So you could have an idea exactly of how they're going to be asked, what they're going to be asked of your language capabilities, okay? There we go, okay. Recommendations. So as we've mentioned before, you do need 3 recommenders for the ETA as well, but these are reference forms. So for your recommenders for ETAs and the foreign language, you're going to enter all of those people's names and emails into the official portal, and then it'll send them an email about what they're filling out. Again, you have instructions for ETA recommendation writers. So there is a whole page that you can send to the people that are looking at, that you're looking at to write these forms for you. And then you can see what that form looks like. So you can see exactly the types of questions that they're going to be asked regarding your ability to overcome challenges, or what qualities have you demonstrated that could be associated with teaching or mentoring, right? you know exactly what they're going to be asking. Maybe think about who could write you the best sort of recommendation based on those types of questions. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to look at under types of awards, English teaching assistant. This is a handy little table. If you wanted to come in here, it would tell you what the placement type is for these countries, how many grants they had, in that last cycle, the type of placements, so you can see, is this a rural area, is this more of a regional city, capital, all that, the teaching commitment that's expected of you, and whether or not it has a language requirement. So if you know that you want to be in a specific region, this might be a very quick way to take a look at which one of those countries might be a best fit for you, right? The other thing that I will point out is the award search. So in the award search, you can filter by ETA. And if you are maybe really, not jazzed about a foreign language proficiency, you could say not required, right? These are all of the countries and the number of awards that they had this past year that were for ETAs that did not require a language, right? Language proficiency. And maybe you are that brave soul that also wants to be in the middle school, right? You can search by that and it will show you, here's all of the placements too, where you may be put into a middle school for this placement. So we've had some students that are like, I only want to work with university level students. I don't want to be working with any young kids. This is a good way to filter that out, right? So both of those resources are available to you on here. The other thing that I will bring up is one of the country pages. So let's go to Spain. So on every country page, you will see the breakdown of awards for that country. In this case, Spain has 185 teaching assistant ETA awards. It's probably one of the most well-established of the ETA programs, so it's not surprising to see 185 on there. It'll also tell you if there are other awards available. Usually these are graduate enrollment or the Open Study Research Awards, right? But let's take a look at the English teaching assistantship. So when you get into the country page, it's going to give you the award profile. It's also going to give you a candidate profile. So it's going to tell you, this is what you should expect teaching in this country and what we're looking for. It's also going to tell you, okay, knowing that we need this covered in some way, here's what we're looking for in an applicant. Now with Spain, like I said, they have it broken down even further. So this is one of the few places that you will put the specific region that you're looking at working in. In fact, you have to have that as the first line of your statement of grant purpose or they throw it out. So that's also embedded in this long page, right? So you would find the region that you want to work in. Let's say you want to be in Madrid. There's 30 ETAs. We actually have someone right now who's in Madrid. And when you get down to candidate profile for Madrid, it says high schools, right? But then when you go even further into placement type, you find out that in Madrid, when they say high schools, they mean that you will be working in essentially a Model UN type of class. So if you have previous Model UN experience, right, or you were doing debate here at FSU, that might be something that you could pull on for that type of application. So you can see Spain is rather long. It has a lot of information in here because it is going by placement type of every single region. When you get down towards the bottom, that is where, oh, no one is getting sick, sorry. Talks about placement type, supplemental project, so it'll tell you whether or not it's required. It is for Spain, so all regions, they expect you to do some sort of project. Some of them, we definitely want you to engage with groups that interest you, but some of them will be very specific about the type of project that you are supposed to be doing. So just make sure that for whatever country you're looking at, you are really reading each of those boxes, right? It'll also tell you about housing arrangements. So in this case, the Spain grantees they are having to arrange their own housing. Usually, it's pretty uncommon to be placed for an ETA position with other people, like other ETA instructors. It could be that you are the only one at that school that is an ETA, right? Because everyone's going to be spread out. I think Spain is a little different just because of how large the program is, but I like to give people that caveat, like you may be sort of solitary in that country. How are you going to show that you can hack that, right? Okay, what's another country we can explore?
To look at something that's way less formal than Spain, Uruguay. It's where they have like 3 ETAs and they.
Yeah, so 6 ETAs, 2 study research awards. Let's take a look at the ETAs. It will tell you up here too the grant lengths, and this one starts in March. I think that's the case for Brazil too. But some of these will start usually in September, like August or September. There are a few that are starting later. Again, it'll show you the award profile. You can see this is much smaller. It actually tells you the ETA activities. So if you're, if you're feeling like you maybe would struggle in some of those, but you would excel in others, those are things in the application you'll want to really lean into those things that you know you'll excel in, and be excited to learn the rest, right? Some of them will talk about wanting you to be leading like a club on campus, right? Or be co-leading a club, things like that. It'll tell you whether or not there's some type of orientation for that position. And here you can see, so candidate profile, candidates with degrees in English, Spanish education, or TEFL/applied linguistics with experience teaching or tutoring are going to be preferred, right? So if you have one of those, it's certainly going to speak better to your application. Foreign language proficiency. Most of the Spanish speaking countries are going to require that you have at least intermediate level. You can see here there are a variety of placement types. Sometimes if you dive further into the placement types, it'll tell you like in your application, you should specify the level of student that you want to work with. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they're just gonna, put you where they want you. And you can certainly write your application with a particular maybe age group in mind, but you wouldn't come out and say that explicitly. Supplemental projects, in this case, it's optional, right? And so if you're not going to do a supplemental project, just maybe think about, well, what do you just hope to see? What do you hope to do while you're there? How do you hope to just learn more about the community? So yeah, you can see some of them, Spain, very, very long. They've got a very detailed idea of what they want from the people that are applying and what you should expect. Some countries are going to be a little more loosey-goosey. They're going to have things that they want, but it's like preferred, optional. You might need a language. They're just really interested in you coming to the country. After getting to speak to some of the commissions, they are like reps from the commissions. They are always so excited. They are like some of the just most excited people that we met. We went to a conference this past summer, and all of the commission folks were just like, oh, well, let me tell you about this. And like, not even so much selling their country, but just that they are always so excited to see the applications coming in. So, they're on your side. They want to see good applications. They want people to come in that are really interested in engaging in research or teaching. Anything else for the good of the order?
I do have an anecdote to share that I think would be relevant, especially since we talked about Spain, because I had a student who just came back from completing their ETA in Spain. And so we met up for coffee and we're just talking about their experience. And they remembered something that I said to them like early in the application process about like finding what is the best placement for them. And when I have students that are interested in Spain, I always encourage them to look at other Spanish countries as well, just to, if nothing else, confirm that Spain is the best location for them. Because She told me at one of the events that Fulbright hosts, where they bring in all of the ETAs together, and it's just kind of like a, hey, we're all here, like, let's get to know each other. She was at a table with other ETAs, and they were kind of just, in just casual conversation of like, oh, well, like, why did you apply to Spain? And, like, da 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 da. And one of the students, like, at their table was like, oh, well, I applied because they had the most awards. And that student did not see out the completion of their experience. I don't know all the details, obviously, but it goes back to my point. When you are looking at the best country for you and that most mutually beneficial relationship, like, that's really important, because it could happen that you are placed there. And if at the end of the day, that's not where you want to be, or that's not the posting that you think is best for you, and, I don't think you're going to have a good time. So really do your due diligence over the next couple of months, to kind of find that perfect balance between what am I looking for and what do I bring to the table, and what is this Fulbright location, what are they offering? Is this going to be mutually beneficial? Do I think I will be challenged, but be able to learn and grow? And do I think I will have a good time with my students? So just something to think about. But I always feel like it's important to mention that in the in this presentation, is to do not just go with where the statistics are, quote unquote, most likely for me to be accepted, but what is the destination that is the best location for you. Thanks for listening to me rant, Bonnie.
Thank you. I think she did say that the person decided to go home because they just could not hack it. Because I'm pretty sure she talked about that in one of her things. So
Yeah.
if that's what happens when you don't bother to do any research into where you might be going and what you might be doing. Yeah. Any other questions for the good of the order? Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone online, in person. Thank you very much, you two. Appreciate you being here. If you do have questions, feel free to contact us. If you're interested in study research, that will be tomorrow. So we will be back in this room talking about study research awards. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.